When Lunch Fights Back. Wickedly Clever Animal Defenses by Rebecca L. Johnson. Introduction. The Challenge of Survival. No one said living on planet Xenon would be easy. Hungry aliens are everywhere. A new group just slithered into view. The aliens are well armed with lasers and a contraption that shoots out nets for capturing prey. The prey, of course, is you. You roll your shoulders and grip the video game controls, thumbs poised over the buttons. You're ready to defend yourself with weapons of your own. You're not going down without a fight. Win or lose, though, the battle on planet Xenon is just a game. Not so here on planet Earth. On Earth, the challenge of survival is a real and serious business. In the wild, every living thing is constantly at risk of being eaten by something else. Good defenses can mean the difference between surviving a predator's attack and becoming its lunch. Sharp teeth and claws are common defense weapons among Earth's animals. So are clever camouflage and being very, very good at hiding. And don't forget speed for fast getaways. But if you think that's the best nature can do, be prepared to be surprised. Chapter 1. Slip sliming away. The Atlantic hadfish. This primitive deep-sea creature is nearly blind, but has a keen sense of smell. It picked up the scent of a dead whale from more than 1 mile, or 1.6 kilometers, away. When it reaches the whale's carcass, it swims around the remains, sizing up the feast. Then the hagfish sinks its teeth into the dead whale's soft, rotting flesh and takes a big bite. As the hagfish eats, a shark arrives. The shark isn't interested in the whale, though. It's after fresh meat. Slowly circling, the shark edges closer to the hagfish until it is just inches away. In a blur of movement, the shark strikes. It grabs the hagfish in its toothy jaws and instantly lets go. The shark's mouth is overflowing with thick, snot-like goo. The slimy stuff fills its throats and clogs its gills. Without gills to pull oxygen from the water, the shark can't breathe. It thrashes its head from side to side with jerky, desperate movements. Unharmed, the hagfish pays no attention. Strings of slime still ooze from its long, rubbery body as it goes back to eating. The shark convulses with what looks like a gigantic cough. Clouds of slime billow out from its gills and throat. Finally able to breathe again, the shark darts away without a backward glance. The science behind the story. Hagfish aren't fish despite their name. They are primitive, eel-like animals that have been roaming the ocean for millions of years. The hagfish have no jaws and no backbone. What they do have, however, is slime. Douglas Fudge should know. Fudge is a biologist at the University of Guelph in Ontario, Canada. He has been studying hagfish and their slimy defense since 1997. Slime is amazingly effective at preventing hagfish from being eaten by fish predators, including sharks, says Fudge. Hagfish release slime the moment something tries to bite them, or even just bothers them. Fudge has been slimed many times while gently handling hagfish in his laboratory. The slime comes from special glands in the hagfish skin. The glands actually release 2 ingredients that combine to make the slime. One ingredient is a slippery mucus. The other is thread-like fibers. Hagfish slime is the only slime we know of in nature that has fibers, Fudge explained. When a predator such as a shark bites a hagfish, a lot happens in a short time. Mucus is injected from the glands as tiny little packages. Fibers are injected as coiled threads. The mucus swells and the fibers uncoil the moment they contact seawater. The fibers and the mucus together form an intricate network that is very good at trapping water, says Fudge. The result is a mixture that expands tremendously and incredibly rapidly. It all happens in about 100 milliseconds, or a tenth of a second, said Fudge. In other words, hagfish make great gobs of slime in the blink of an eye. It's a nearly unbeatable defense. Hagfish are nicknamed snot eels for good reason. They can release handfuls of slippery slime in seconds. Chapter 2: Concealed Weapons. An African hairy frog sits in the leaves beside a rushing river. A moment ago the grass along the riverbank moved ever so slightly. Instinctively the frog froze. A river otter crouches in the grass, muscles tensed. It watches the frog and waits for it to get closer. Eventually the frog relaxes and starts climbing up the bank. The otter springs and catches the frog in one of its front legs. Without teeth or claws, the African hairy frog seems defenseless, but as it kicks out with its hind legs, it unleashes hidden weapons. Pointed bits of bone poke out through the pads on its rear toes. The frog uses the sharp bones like claws. It rakes them across the otter's sensitive nose. Surprised, the otter loosens its grip. The frog wrenches free and leaps into the river's fast-moving current. African clawless otters eat many kinds of small animals, including fish and frogs. It's likely that these otters try to eat hairy frogs, although scientists have never caught one in the act. The science behind the story. Bubble up at the top. The sharp tips of a hairy frog's bone claws poke through the skin on its rear toes. The science behind the story. Many vertebrate animals have claws. A typical claw grows from the end of an animal's toe. It sticks out beyond the toe's tip and is made of a hard material called keratin. The same material makes up your fingernails. The African hairy frog doesn't have claws, at least not typical ones. When threatened, however, it creates effective substitutes. Biologist David Blackburn and his colleagues at Harvard University figured out how the hairy frog deploys its unusual weapons. Blackburn, now an assistant curator at the California Academy of Sciences, used dissections and x-rays to peer inside the frog's hind feet. Blackburn discovered that the last bone in each of the hairy frog's rear toes is pointed and curved. It's shaped like a cat's claw. Just beyond this curved bone is a small bony nodule, Blackburn said. The curved bone is connected to the bony nodule by a piece of tough tissue. Attached to the other end of the curved bone is a muscle. When the muscle contracts, it breaks the connection between the bone and its bony nodule and releases the curved claw-like bone, Blackburn explained. The contracting muscles pull the curved bone down through the frog's toe. The bone's pointed end pokes through the skin of the toe pad, and presto, an instant claw. If you pick up a nice big hairy frog, the first thing it does is kick its feet and rake its claws against your skin, said Blackburn. How sharp are these claws? They're like the points of really sharp pencils and can certainly give you a good bloody scratch. When danger passes, the hairy frog retracts its bony weapons. The punctures in its toe pads may heal, but inside the toes, the claws are still there, ready for action. A view inside the toe of a hairy frog reveals the curved bone that breaks free from the small bony nodule and drops down to form a claw. The orange markings along the sides of a Spanish-ribbed newt are where its sharp-tipped ribs will emerge from the skin. Another bony breakthrough. The Spanish-ribbed newt also uses bones as weapons, but in a very different way. When threatened, it forces the tips of its ribs through the sides of its bodies. This creates 2 rows of needle-sharp spines. Zoologist Egon Heiss from Austria's University of Vienna has studied the newt, which is a type of salamander. When threatened by predators such as foxes and ferrets, many salamanders flare their ribs to make their bodies look bigger. Spanish-ribbed newts, however, have extraordinary ribs. Their ribs are much longer compared to other salamanders and sharply pointed at the tips, explained Heiss. When the newt flares its ribs, their sharp tips press hard against the animal's body wall. So hard, in fact, that they tear right through and poke out of the skin. The Spanish-ribbed newt also produces a milky white poison from glands in its skin. It is truly nasty stuff. If the skin secretion touches an animal's eyes or mouth, it burns like red-hot chili. I know from experience, Heiss said. But if it gets into an animal's bloodstream, it can be deadly, even in small amounts. As the newt's ribs poke out through its skin, the sharp tips become coated with poison. If a predator catches a newt and bites down hard, it gets more than a mouthful of pain. The newt's rib tips act like hypodermic needles, injecting poison deep into the tissues lining the predator's mouth. Spanish-ribbed newts may survive most predator attacks, even if the predators don't. When all the fuss is over, the newts simply pull their ribs back inside their bodies. The holes made by the rib tips heal remarkably quickly, leaving the newts as good as new. You can see the poison tips of the newt's ribs sticking out of its sides in this photo. Chapter 3: Toxic Bubbles. A blue-spotted Turacula termite mingles with other workers and a soldier, the termite with the huge head. The old termite shuffles through the nest. Younger workers push past her. They are faster and stronger. They can cut wood, termite food, so easily with their sharpened mandibles. The old termite's mandibles are almost too dull to cut anything anymore. Still, she has something her younger nestmates do not. 2 blue spots that gleam on her back. Suddenly there's a commotion at the nest entrance. The colony is under attack by an enemy termite species. The old termite hurries out to help defend her home. Colony soldiers bite attackers in half, but they can only kill one enemy at a time. The old termite wades into battle. Half a dozen invaders rush towards her. She nips at them with her dull mandibles, but they quickly overpower her. She waits until she is covered with enemies. Then she triggers the blue-spotted weapon on her back. A drop of liquid gushes out of her ruptured body. The enemies that had been clinging to her twitch and die. Sadly, so does the old termite, but she sacrifices herself to help her colony survive. Under attack by 2 enemy termites, a blue-spotted Turacula deploys her chemical weapon, releasing a deadly drop of toxin. The science behind the story. While slogging through a rainforest in French Guiana, scientists Thomas Bourgogne and Jan Sabonek come upon a colony of North Turacula termites. They notice something odd as they watch the insects go in and out of their nest. Some termite workers had blue spots on their backs. Intrigued, Bourgogne grabbed one with a forceps. The termite promptly burst. Very carefully, the scientists collected several blue-spotted workers and examined them more closely. The blue spots, they discovered, were tiny pouches filled with blue crystals. We exported some of the termites to our lab in the Czech Republic, where a team of biochemists analyzed them, explained Bourgogne. Crystals turned out to be copper-containing protein. Related proteins are secreted in termite digestive tracts, but no one had ever seen pouches full of this protein on a termite's back. Obviously, the crystal-filled pouches were some sort of defensive weapon. But how did it work? The scientists dissected a blue-spotted worker under a microscope. Beneath her crystal-filled pouches, they discovered a set of salivary glands. Mixing saliva from some of these glands with some of the blue crystals instantly forms a toxic liquid. The scientists suspect that when the blue-spotted workers are attacked, they somehow break open their crystal-filled pouches and the underlying salivary glands. Crystals and saliva combine forming a drop of toxic liquid that bubbles up and out of the termite's back. Obviously, North Turacula workers avoid triggering the mixing of the blue crystals in saliva, as this causes their death, said Bourguignon. However, when they are bitten by an enemy, then they trigger their weapon. This self-sacrifice is the last chance for the North Turacula workers to harm their enemies. It's a very effective sacrifice. Every enemy within range drops dead.